Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Terry James Gingrass, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat. This is a show trying to make the world safe for ADHD. I am a clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist, and I'm in private practice, and at least half of my practice, if not more, is ADHD. I do adults and kids, and at this stage of my career, it's mostly assessments. And I'm also the parent of what was an ADHD child and is now an ADHD adult. And I like to remind people that we're still learning a lot about ADHD. When I went through my graduate school training, I managed to make it all the way through without ever hearing anything about ADHD. Nothing, zero, nada, zip. And actually, when we started to be concerned about our son, we, in spite of the fact that I was pretty well connected in the psychological community, as a matter of fact, I was working at a large hospital with an extended psychology staff, and couldn't find anybody, even people. I had, two acquaintances, folks I'd known for quite a while, who had postdocs in pediatric psychology, psychology for kids, and they couldn't help me. Now that shows that's about 30 years ago now, I guess, but that's the way the world was back then. Now it seems like we know more. I'm not going to say we've got everything answered, not by a long shot, but there's a lot more research, I believe, and a lot more press given to ADHD than there used to be way back when. And we're finding out new stuff. I mean, all the time we find out that it's genetic, that it's inherited, rather than the result of some birth trauma or some behavior by mom when she was pregnant or any of those things. It's inherited. It runs in families. So if you wonder why your kid and your crazy Uncle Mike act so much alike, it's probably because they both have the ADHD gene. And it's a sometimes it makes for exciting Thanksgiving reunions, but other than that, a lot of times it's a real pain. So it's inherited. It's we know that much. We know we have multiple ways of treating it. Unfortunately, for some people's belief system, stimulant medication is probably the fastest, most efficient treatment. You take your magic pill, and in 20 or 30 minutes, your behaviors change significantly. Okay, this is I don't know, it's not a real problem for most people, but for some folks it's real hard to swallow that their kid might have to be on medication for the rest of his or her life. And of course, the opposite thing happens when you don't treat it. Oh, I'm not going to give my kid pills for the rest of his life. Well, we know that the outcome for people who have ADHD and it's not treated is not very good. Okay? They have a much higher risk of substance abuse problems. They have much lower employment productivity. They tend to get fired more. They tend to be less or the least efficient workers in an organization. It all and they tend to have a lot more divorces than most, and problems maintaining relationships. This doesn't seem to me is worth discontinuing or never starting what is a safe, effective medication. And I know there are people out there who claim it'll do everything but cause horns to grow on your forehead. But in point of fact, the research indicates it's safe. And just let's leave it there. Because I wanted to talk this time about something a little more lighthearted, because I get sick of going over all the time. I don't know how many couples I've had in my office. And you're always, okay, you're having some troubles now, but what attracted you to him or her in the first place? And almost 100% of the time, he was so much fun and so interesting to be with. And the same if it happened to be a young lady. She was a lot of fun to be around. And that's one of the things that we don't frequently say a whole lot about with ADHDers. Oh, he was a lot of fun. He was, could always see the humor and stuff. He could make a joke out of almost anything. He could, da-da-da-da-da. And that tends to be one of the characteristics. Of course, when you're born outside the box and you don't ever quite fit in, it's a lot easier for you to see the absurdity of some things. And that's what leads to humor. And so, I would say that it is likely that if you know some people with ADHD, that they're kind of fun to be around. That leads us to some. Why would that be? Why would they be more likely to be fun, to have a good sense of humor? Why is that? Well, I would say, I don't know if you remember, but a couple of weeks ago I proposed that ADHD was a lousy name for this disorder and tend to minimize the difficulties it caused and all that, and that we should call it something a little more scientific sounding. And my suggestion was dopamine metabolism disorder, I believe. Based on the notion that ADHDers seem to metabolize dopamine, which is one of the neurotransmitters in the brain, faster than regular folks, than neurotypicals, if you will. And that one of the reasons they do a lot of the things they do, like risk-taking kinds of sports and activities, is because that charge they get from doing it increases the dopamine in their brain. Well, and so, a lot of times they'll do dangerous stuff, or, they think that, thank you, Karen. Dopamine regulation disorder is what I guess I said. Okay. I will have to remember that. But it's the same idea, is the idea that they burn up dopamine faster than the rest of us, and that they do all these things they do trying to stimulate their brains. And there are a lot of things that'll do that aren't maybe so dangerous, and one of them is humor, play. I don't even remember how long ago, but it was at least 20 years. Somebody was suggesting that in every civilization of mankind, they found evidence that games were being played, that people did sports, and that perhaps the better name for the species, or if I got that right anyway, was not Homo sapiens, which means wise man, but Homo ludens, which means game-playing man. And that every civilization, like I said, has had games that it played. I forget whether it's the Aztecs or the Incas, but they had some game that was a lot like basketball, except they didn't have a backboard. So it must have been a little more difficult than basketball. And, like I said, every civilization has had some kind of game, some kind of things they do just for fun. Not because it had any particular value, but just for enjoyment. And it has the natural effect of increasing dopamine in your brain. So it naturally, when you can see things playfully, when you can see things looking for the humor and or the essential absurdity or whatever you want to talk, however you want to say it, in the situation, it jacks up your brain and makes it work better. Actually, probably why we're so dependent on games to this day. One of the things a lot of us have missed about the coronavirus is there are no sports to even watch. And watching sort of transports you. It's like you're there. Anyway, so this is a rather convoluted, I know, connection to make, but ADHDers tend to be humorous, all things being equal, because it makes their brains feel better. And so they're looking for things to think are funny. And, I know a lot of people with ADHD get depressed and get anxious and all that stuff, but the humor thing is something they can look at and use. And of course we all can, because it makes all of us feel better. The whole ADHD as a dopamine regulation disorder, thank you, suggests that one of the things is to have more fun. And that would also apply even if you're an ADHD entrepreneur out there running your own company, is that if you're having fun with it and your employees are having fun with it, of course, while still getting the job done, it's going to be better. It's going to be a better company. It's going to work better. And you're only going to screw up if you start getting stressed and tensed up about it. And same thing probably with all of us when I really think about it. But ADHDers tend to be more fun, to have more fun, because it's better for their brains. They feel better in ways that the rest of us perhaps don't even understand when they're playing, when they're having fun, so on. Okay, that's me for this week. As I continue doing this, I'm starting to see more and more connections between different aspects of things with the ADHD brain. And of course, I'm a neuropsychologist, so I do brains. But it's really getting more and more interesting when you see more of the connections that are available. Okay, I am Terry James Gingras, PhD. I'm a neuropsychologist, and this show is about making the world safe for ADHD. And the reason for that is that no compliant person ever really changed the world, but ADHDers do it. All the time, because they think outside the box. They're the people that are going to make the big changes. And so we need to encourage that. We need to have a blend. We need to have some folks who think outside the box all the time. That's what will help us as a civilization. And Lord knows we need some of that. Okay, my website is terrygingrasphd.com. And keep watching. Give us a like if you would, or if you could. And just keep watching. And we're going to have some announcements in the not too distant future, but it's going to take a little while. Okay, we'll catch you next time. Bye.